All right, so we are going to go back to the spread of industry 6.2. This is our new unit, as you can tell. There is up to 6.8, so we will have seven uh, slideshows, all in total. All right, just to go over Industrial Revolution, it's more than just making stuff, right? It's changing Europe socially, politically, and economically. In the first half, we talked about politically, it's changing through the Reform Act and through repealing of the Corn Laws. Economically, we start to see a shift with the cottage industry and the putting out system, and the abundance of supply as well as the abundance of markets. And then socially, because of all this money flow, we have people's lives improving, and people are have full bellies and they're shopping for once. And that's kind of what my crazy little saying, a saving Englishman's government has resources, markets, and inventions or incentives. I don't know. It's not the greatest. But anything to help you come up with some acronym or a little phrase like Roy G. Biv or, that's what I'm trying to get at. If you can find something, maybe I can use it and for future and we can learn. All right, so going through all this, we've talked about this Reform Act, repealing of the Corn Laws. Uh, we have lots of resources through Scotland. Thank you, Scotland. Now we have incentives through the British Royal Society of the Arts, and now we stopped at inventions. Once again, with AP Euro, it's lots of names. All right, you just need to know the basics. You don't need to know everything, but if I say praise of folly, you need to know Erasmus. If I say vindication of rights of women, you need to know Mary Wollstonecraft. Uh, if I say, I don't know, 95 Theses, right? It's the same thing. You just need to know people and their works on Crime and Punishment. Who wrote that? So, like, Wealth of Nations. So it's a lot of people and books and things. And now in Industrial Revolution, we're going to kind of stick with that theme. You don't need to know every single inventor, all right? Um, just the big ones, right? James Watts and Hargreaves. They're the two big dogs, all right? The spinning jenny is right here, named after Jenny, um, his daughter, and then the steam engine. He didn't create it, he just perfected it, is James Watts. Um, I believe it was Newcomen, I believe, in 1710 or 1712, created the steam engine, but James Watts, much later, perfected it. And then I don't think it got patented until much later after Watts. But these are the two big inventions that you really need to know. The spinning jenny, which was manufacturing clothes at a much faster rate and a much cheaper rate, and then the steam engine using that coal that we have in Britain and making it into energy to power the turbines and to power transportation. Both extremely important for the British Industrial Revolution, especially when it comes to economics. All right, now, hooray! Britain is so rich and powerful, and now they want to show off. And so they hold this international celebration, right? Called the Great Exhibition. And this is essentially showing off to the world how amazing Great Britain is. So the exhibition first starts in 51. And it's essentially important because it's showing off Britain's industrial power. It's showing off all their inventions that they created with the steam engine and spinning jenny, and all their achievements that they have done compared to the rest of the world. All right, and then they build this ginormous thing, this huge thing. It is called the Crystal Palace, right? All right, so it's called this Crystal Palace. It's a gigantic structure. I mean, look at this thing. That is ginormous. It's 19 acres of land in London, and it's the largest glass structure ever at the time. It was a symbol of the British optimism, and it was to essentially showcase how innovation has come, how more efficient we are with our buildings, and how prettier our buildings are. And it's kind of a showing of progress that mankind is improving amongst themselves, and we are improving within society. And now that we've had this exhibition, now that we've had the showing off, we start to see the revolution spreading throughout Europe. And it goes all the way to the east, and it goes all the way to the south of Europe, and it eventually even goes across the Atlantic into the Americas. Once again, it kind of spreads relatively quickly. And we're going to talk about two main spots, France and the South and Eastern Europe. So France is right here, which is just due south of Great Britain, if you don't know your geography. And then Eastern and Southern Europe are kind of forgotten in European history, especially in this curriculum. But we will very briefly touch upon it. All right, so let's talk about France real quick. Can I extend this at all? Oh. Okay. I don't know if that will do a difference. I don't know if you saw anything, but hopefully the words weren't previously cut off. But okay, France, due south of Great Britain. Once again, 1815, a certain person, this guy, got banished into the middle of nowhere. All right, and then France started to slowly adapt, to the Industrial Revolution. They slowly adapt mainly because they didn't have as many resources as Great Britain did, specifically the coal and iron ore. However, during Napoleon's reign, Napoleon did do some good things to set up their industrialization process. So one of the good things that Napoleon did was the Quebec Canal, and essentially is right here, which is north of Paris, right at the top part next to the lower countries of Belgium and Holland, and essentially is a connection between rural France and to Paris. That way, resources can be traveled much more efficiently to the main urban areas of France. It was very important so they could transport materials back and forth. All right. And then once again, they were still on the slow side because France literally just went through a revolution and went through all of the Napoleonic Wars. So it took them a little bit longer. But France is known for their silk, so that's kind of where they made their money. Where Britain was making their money off textiles, France was making their money off silk. And then under Napoleon III, who is the new leader at the time, post-Napoleon and a post-Louis XVIII, so it's now Napoleon III, and he does create some He does implement some industry policies, where he is focusing more on centralizing his power and centralizing the government structure, and he doesn't really care about entrepreneurship. He is very tight with his control, and he is less willing to work with the entrepreneurs like like Britain. Just to kind of recap, Great Britain's economic system is more laissez-faire, means a hands-off approach. So they're letting the entrepreneurs and private industries, private companies kind of do their work, where France is the opposite. France is more publicly owned companies, and they are more hesitant to let private industry take over. Now, let's go to the east and the south. So these regions, so once again, if you don't know a map, make sure you do. We have Eastern and Southern, right? Italy, Spain, Portugal are considered Southern. Eastern, you have Poland and Russia, right? These also lacked minerals and resources, And the big kicker is the nobles of the robe. Actually, nobles of the robe are France. Don't get mixed up with them. But the nobles did not have incentives, motivation. They liked the practices that they continued to do. All right, so once again, lacking resources. So the South, Portugal and Spain, Southern Italy, Greece, even in the eastern side of like all the Balkans areas, all right, they lacked these resources, which powered industrialization in Great Britain and France, all right. So these countries had no coal and no iron, which makes things a lot harder. All right. Now, the elites, that's the second big part. They have no incentive, okay? They have this old economic arrangement, right, where the nobles and the elite landowners own the serfs and the peasants, and they have kind of the deal where the serfs and peasants work for the landowners and the nobility, and that's how it works, and that's how it's been for a long time. But now we see Britain and France accelerating because they've abandoned those systems, whereas the South and Eastern Europe have hung on to those systems because the elite like to stay elite and they're afraid of losing their power, their influence. I don't know how much time I have. It's okay though. The landed elite had there was no incentive. Why industrialize if you're doing great, right? So they have no incentive to actually industrialize because if they do industrialize, they will lose all their workers, and they don't want to lose their workers. They don't want to lose the people who are under them making them money. So there's no real incentive. Also, a lot of these areas are state-run governments, a lot of public companies. If so, there's very, very, very few private enterprises. And as a result, there's some consequences. Where was I? There are some consequences, okay? Essentially, serfdom did eventually get abolished thanks to the big three of Prague. Well, Russia didn't, but Austria and Prussia. And now majority of Europe is free of serfdom. But that still leaves a lot of poor people, a lot of homeless people. And so when they're not industrialized, there's a lot of primitive practices, which can lead to mistakes, right? We remember back in like the Little Ice Age when there was massive famine due to weather. Kind of the same thing here, right? There's problems happening when you are reliant on primitive agricultural practices, and so failing to industrialize led to a big problem. There's lots of big problems, but the one we're really going to focus on is the potato famine in Ireland. Yes, the potato is a staple. It's in almost every meal, and it's perfect for poor people in Ireland. But a plant disease struck in the 40s, which led to famine, which means lots of people died because, well, they can't eat a potato anymore, and that's in every meal. So you can either die in Ireland or you can move somewhere where there's actually food. And so you see this huge influx in immigrants heading to the Americas, primarily the United States. And this is when you start to see Ellis Island being used and all those things you learned in AP US or regular US. So that is kind of a big example of the consequence of not industrializing. Once again, Ireland is not part of Great Britain, so don't get that mixed up. Ireland is a separate country. Northern Ireland is part of Great Britain, not Ireland. Alrighty, that's all I got for you guys today. Enjoy your break. Tomorrow, I'm not really 100% sure what we're going to be doing, but it'll be something simple. Alrighty, take care.